Hello, and welcome to Grey.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Caitlin Smith, marine biologist at Clearwater Marine Aquarium, an organization preserving our environment while inspiring the human spirit through leadership in the rescue, rehabilitation, and release of marine life, environmental education, research, and conservation. And if you're new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about an organization that has rescued more than 1,200 sea turtles and released over 600 sea animals since 2010. Hello, Caitlin. Welcome to Grey.com Talks. We're excited to have you here.
Good morning and hello. Thank you for having us. I'm certainly excited to be with you today.
Wonderful. How would you describe Clearwater Marine Aquarium for someone who is not familiar with your work?
So Clearwater Marine Aquarium, the word aquarium is in our name, of course. When a lot of folks come, they're envisioning a lot of habitats with animals. But as you mentioned, our mission is to rescue, rehabilitate, and release marine life. So first and foremost, we are a working marine life rescue hospital. We typically have sea turtle patients coming through. Those a large number to hear, kind of remind myself that we do have a number of turtles coming to us every single year. Currently we have 8 patients, all of which are sea turtles. And so working as a marine life rescue hospital, the first step is to rescue the animals. And then we bring them in and we triage those animals to determine their illness, what caused them to maybe strand, if they're a dolphin or a manatee, why they went sort of wayward, if they're an otter, or if they were found floating like a sea turtle. So figure out what's wrong, come up with a treatment plan, put them through rehabilitation. So we're, providing medical attention for these animals. And then ultimately our goal is to release them to the wild. Now, while that is our mission at its core, we're also a home to a number of beautiful resident animals, like Winter, the dolphin. A lot of folks come to us having seen Dolphin Taylor movie, making Winter very famous, released back in 2011. Unfortunately, she was found wrapped in a fishing crab trap line. So the way a fishing crab trap works is there's a trap at the bottom and then there's a rope or tether to a buoy, so a fisherman can easily locate the crab trap. But she was wrapped up in that rope, that line, and it actually caused the necrosis of her tail fluke tissue, so it fell off on its own. And unfortunately, she no longer has that tail, but a local clinic heard about her story and wanted to make a prosthetic tail for her, and she uses that for physical therapy. So we have animals who unfortunately cannot go back to the wild, but we're able to provide them a safe home for the rest of their lives, provide all of the care, the attention, the love that we could possibly give them. And then being able to educate our guests, our local students through educational add-on programs, coming in and learning topics in math and science, but then also having a reach sort of globally as well through online versions. So there's a lot that goes on with Clearwater Marine Aquarium.
Yes, it's very unfortunate that some animals get into unfortunate situations and get hurt. But the good thing is that your organization is a hospital, a rescue hospital and rehabilitation hospital for many animals that require immediate care. And on top of that, you also provide permanent home for so many other members of the marine life. And you're also pursuing a mission of educating people while providing them an experience to get to see how marine life live, and also about the issues of rehabilitation, conservation, and rescue of them. So the fact that your work puts attention on many different aspects and brings impact on many different levels is very important. Before we deep dive into the conversation of your work, could you please describe what's the current state of marine life in general? What are marine animals are in danger? Just the status quo background information on the marine life.
Sure. So unfortunately, our marine ecosystems, obviously they are vast, right? Most of our planet is covered in water, be it fresh, be it salt water. And sadly, all of our marine life is truly threatened, and mostly it comes from um, humans, whether it's through habitat loss, through pollution. Of course, there's, a lot of information put out there through social media, things go viral. We see plastic bags in the water, we see straws in the water, and animals ingesting them, or like in Winter's case, becoming entangled in fishing gear. So truly at its core, all of our marine life are essentially threatened in one way or another. Now, as far as status, whether they're actually truly endangered species because their population is so small, or threatened, that really sort of depends on the species, but a number of animals sadly are endangered or threatened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a result of human actions that we don't fully realize to the extent that we are
Mm-hmm.
hurting marine life. And if we educate ourselves more, we can prevent it and make sure that the population of the marine life doesn't decrease, and we create safe environment for them to grow and just live their lives and save our ecosystem in general. You mentioned while we're talking on the mission of your organizations that you're focusing on the rescue, rehab, and release of the marine animals. Could you
Mm-hmm.
please describe how does this process work?
Sure. So here at CMA, we are part of a much larger stranding network. So I like to use the analogy when we're rescuing marine life or any animal, because sometimes we get calls about, say, freshwater turtles, for example. I like to equate it to sort of our emergency medicine system here. So imagine, you call 911, there's an emergency, you want the closest ambulance. So when we do get a call about from a citizen, maybe someone's walking Clearwater Beach and they notice that a bird is entangled in fishing line, or perhaps there's a manatee that has stranded. We do receive oftentimes the call, or if we don't receive the call, they might notify the local law enforcement, so they'll call 911, or FWC, which is our state level agency, so Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Once we get the call and we get the go ahead, we'll basically pack up all of our needs. So we're looking for information from the caller. Location, of course, is important. How many animals? What type of animal is there? Are there any obvious signs of distress? So, for example, that a bird being entangled in fishing line, perhaps, or having swallowed a hook. Sometimes our turtles come to us having swallowed a hook. And so we kind of want to be able to sort of prepare ourselves for what we're arriving to. We'll pack everything up in our rescue vehicle and go underway. And depending on the animal, the species, of course, we'll start the rescue process. For example, mammals, it's important, to keep their skin moist, keep them shaded because they are susceptible to sunburn. So we may have canopies or towels and sprayers to spray water onto those animals, making sure that we're monitoring them constantly. So as soon as we arrive, particularly with mammals, we're going to be monitoring respiration rate. We're going to look at their behaviors. There's obvious signs of distress. Are they lethargic? We're going to be noting all of that throughout the entire rescue process. And then ultimately, if we're chosen as the facility for rehabilitation, they'll come back. And that's where our medical team will really go into starting that triage. So we're taking measurements, weight, looking for external injuries. Maybe if it's a turtle that was entangled, are there cuts on their footwork? If it's a fishing line, can we sort of keep it still? Meaning, can we tape it to the back of their carapace so a turtle doesn't continue to swallow that hook? So we go through a number of steps to get it to a good place to then determine the treatment plan, the plan of action, and we'll kind of go from there. And then our rehab biologists will help monitor that animal the entire time it's in our care. So it's much like us going, to the emergency room thereafter, and then potentially getting admitted to the hospital. We're going to have, nurses come in and check on us regularly for signs of improvement. And then we'll kind of go through the entire process. And ultimately, all animals who are potentially going to be released have to pass a test. For sea turtles, for example, we want to make sure they can dive into a water column to ensure that they will be successful in foraging for food. For cetaceans, so dolphins, whales, we may perform a hearing test to ensure they can hear the full frequency that they need in order to hunt and socialize, communicate with other animals. So just sort of depends on the animal, what test we may give them. And then if they pass, we'll ultimately release them to the wild.
Mm-hmm. I really like the analogy that you mentioned of going to the emergency room and going and being sent to the hospital and then everyone taken care of. So marine biologists in this case you guys are actually doctors for sea animals and marine life in general. And you mentioned that the causes, while the calls that you get are all can be from a different venues with different animals being differently hurt. So all the processes per each individual animal. So you take into consideration their needs, and once they are being sent to the hospital, you mentioned they do go through the process of rehabilitation, and then once you are preparing them for the release, you make sure that they are ready and are capable of surviving once they are released. So it's not just, oh, okay, we're gonna be there, like take care of them for a week or two and then release them. No, you actually go and enable them to survive, enable them to continue their lives without the support of humans in general. So I applaud you for that wonderful
Thank
work.
you. And that's actually something that brings up something that I did not mention. While we're rehabbing, we're also trying to stay as hands-off as possible because we want to make sure those animals are successful in the wild on their own. So we're not, if you go to an aquarium or watch our webcams or come see a presentation, you might notice that we're very hands-on, tactile. We use Hope Blake's squirt gun, so we'll spray her with the squirt gun and water play. And that's really important for our resident animals to build those relationships and build that trust. But we won't do that for our rehabbing patients because we don't want them to associate humans with care or food, so that way they are successful out in the wild. But yeah, it's an incredible process, and we're so very thankful to have our on-staff veterinarian who helps. She triages them, comes up with the treatment plan alongside our rehab biologist, and helps make those animals better.
Indeed. The process of rescue, rehab, and release is very important. And you mentioned that you are making sure that they become independent regardless of human interaction or not.
Absolutely.
Besides this process of 3 Rs, you also have different programs on conservation. Could you please describe us what kind of conservation programs do you run?
Sure. They are numerous, given that we have a variety of marine wildlife that we study. A lot of our conservation, of course, is going to begin with research. We can talk about manatees, North Atlantic right whales, sea turtles. I'm a little biased. I am also a volunteer with our sea turtle conservation team. So starting with them, we have a team of permitted individuals. Sea turtles are one of those endangered species, unfortunately. So not anyone can do the work that we do, but we go out and we monitor 21 miles of shore, looking for signs of nesting activity, and we'll mark each nest off and then check that every single day to ensure the health and well-being of that nest, while maintaining a safe distance, because we want to ensure that those animals, again, are going up into the wild on their own with very minimal human interaction, just like our rehab patients. So doing that, it's really important because only 1 in about every 1,000 sea turtles will grow to adulthood to continue the population. Unfortunately, they were once hunted for their meat, and then of course hunters realized that we're not seeing as many turtles come up. And then in 1973, the Endangered Species Act was passed. So a lot of animals are protected under that here in the United States. For manatees, we talk about, what we have basically in our backyard because we are situated on the water near the Gulf of Mexico. We're helping to protect the Florida manatee. It is one of the subspecies that we find here. And we actually have an incredible research institute headed by Dr. Buddy Powell. We monitor a number of manatees. We're just talking about one this morning. And it's fantastic work because we're able to safely satellite tag these animals to learn more about their distribution. So where are they located here in Florida and other parts of the Gulf of Mexico, being that we monitor what's called the Manatee Rehabilitation Project. So here at CMA, we're actually responsible for monitoring the movement of the manatees, even though we have organizations all across the state that contribute to this. And then we talk about the North Atlantic right whale. Sadly, there are fewer than 400 individuals left in the entire population. Their migration path runs along the east coast of the United States, which intersects with a number of very large shipping lanes for passing goods back and forth mostly. And then, of course, commercial fishing off the east coast of the country. So while they migrate 1,000 miles down to the warmer waters around Florida and Georgia to calve, they're going back north and they're very much so at risk of being struck. So we have an aerial survey team that monitors the population of right whales. So it's kind of, people think about research and they're like, you're studying in a lab or at the library. It's like, no, we're hands-on, we're in the field, we're seeing these animals. So flying in a plane above them to take photographs because we can identify them apart from one another. Oddly enough, from what's called whale lice that attaches to their backs. Very interesting if you look up the picture of what they look like, but they create unique patterns, just like human fingerprints. So we can discern individuals apart from one another, see how successful they are, and get a population estimate based off of that. And similarly, we study bottlenose dolphins in the area as well. Have been doing so since 2013. So our education department here at CMA is responsible for this research, and we use their dorsal fins, or what we call dorsal fin photo ID. Much like the patterns on the backs of right whales and human fingerprints, no two dolphin dorsal fins are alike. I'm happy to say that we have had over 200 individuals photographed in our survey, and are, with them being at the top of the food chain and apex predator, they're also an indicator species for us. So they let us know how the rest of our ecosystem is doing. Because if we don't see them, then maybe their food source isn't here, and then it kind of trickles down the food chain. So that's a lot that we do here in terms of conservation efforts. But we really, truly do try to get out there. We're in the field, we're conducting the research ourselves, we're marking off sea turtle nests to ultimately protect the wildlife.
Indeed, your research institutes and your conservation programs are very impactful based on what you have described. The fact the statistics on the sea turtles and on the white whales are very sad, but the good thing is that you are now monitoring them, you are researching their habitats, understanding how to help them to grow their population. So it's important to indicate that although the circumstances are very sad, but the good thing is that the work is being done by marine biologists at CMA and other marine biologists in the Florida region in general. So and it gives the hope for the better future for the marine life in general. So that's very, very important to know that. One of the things that we touched upon very briefly, you mentioned that your CMA focuses on education. Could you please describe what kind of education programs do you run, and what's the impact of those education programs for people who are involved in them?
Sure. So we have our own education department here at Clearwater Marine Aquarium. We offer in-person classroom programs that are typically 45 minutes. We talk about a variety of things. We might talk about how Winter lost her tail and the physics behind her prosthetic tail, talk about turtle species. So we cover a wide variety of topics. We also have online curriculum available that we've created that go along with Florida educational learning standards. And then throughout the aquarium, we also have, well, right now we have our whale exhibit, which is very exciting for a limited time. But we have behind the scenes tours, and one of my personal favorites, a little biased, but our eco boat tours. So we go on our boats for an hour. We tour around Clearwater Bay and parts of the Gulf of Mexico, just looking for marine life and talking about the ecosystem. And we want to inspire folks, because you said it. We do a lot of research. We have a lot of conservation efforts, and that's the first step, right? To bringing those species back. They're bouncing their population back, increasing their numbers. The next step is just public awareness. So we're able to use our own research, our own statistics, and kind of really hone in on that and share it with the general public, our guests who visit us from all over the world. These days it's a little different, of course, but we are able to impart that knowledge, and ultimately we're trying to draw parallels between where they may live. Say if they're coming from the middle of the United States, why should they care about an animal that lives here in Florida? Well, we live within watersheds, and what you put into your ecosystem there might trickle down into a watershed that leads into our stream, that leads into the Mississippi River, that leads into the Gulf of Mexico, for example. And then it could have an impact. It might take a little while, but it happens. So just really making those connections with guests and seeing them realize why it's so important that we protect these animals so they're around for future generations to come.
Yeah, it's very essential to raise public awareness, and the fact that you are offering in-house courses and in-house experiences, as well as you are partnering with Florida State Education Department to have to educate more and more people. That's very important. And the personalized approach that you mentioned, whether you live in a different state or whether you live in Florida, to explain how the marine life actually impacts your life and how protecting them is important for sustainability of humans and the environment in general is very, very essential. If someone would like to support CMA, how can they do that?
That's a great question. So from far and wide, we have folks who visit our online gift shop, of course. So we are a nonprofit organization, in case anyone has seen Dolphin Tale. We are not supported by a millionaire, but we do get support from guests coming through our doors, making those purchases through our gift shop. Any online material that is purchased, of course, goes right back to the aquarium and helping to continue our mission of not only rescue, rehab, release, but our educational programs, and also taking care of our resident animals. So that's a great question. There are a number of ways, and if you're in Florida, if you're in Clearwater, you can always come visit us here at CMA, get to see our work in action in person.
Wonderful. The link to the CMA website will be provided in the description, so you can, you listening and viewing, familiarize yourself with the great work that Caitlin and the team at CMA are doing, and also make purchases to help rescue and save the animals. Thank you so much, Caitlin. It was wonderful to get to know you and the great work you are doing at CMA.
Thank you so much, and thanks again for having us.
For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press like and share button, because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithms that this conversation is important, that helping the marine life, rescuing them and releasing them, as well as conserving them, is very important for our ecosystem and environment. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.